Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at my second classical game in the knockout portion against the current world chess champion, Gukesh Domaraju. Now, yesterday in the first game, when I was playing with the white pieces, it was a very exciting game, but ultimately ended in a draw. So today we play the second game. If it is a draw as well, that means we will move to the dreaded tiebreakers, which are being played with 10 minutes. All right, so let's get into the action. We're playing classical chess once again, second game of the match, and Gukesh has white pieces. So here Gukesh plays move f4 on move number 1. As always, we have a different setup. Generally speaking, when you get bishops in the corner, like on g1 and h1, usually what you try to do is potentially open up both the diagonals right away so the bishops have a bunch of scope. So we get f4. Here I play the move f5, of course, trying to open up my diagonals as well. And now Gukesh plays move c3. Now, what's funny about this is that in this position, it's worth noting that white already has a substantial advantage according to the computer of 0.3. So I go f5. Here we get the move c3 from Gukesh, trying to target the pawn on f5. And now I play the move g6, guarding the pawn, but opening up the scope for the other beat. Here Gukesh plays g3, and now I play the move e5. We get pawn takes pawn, bishop takes pawn, and after the move e4, I play bishop g7. Now, up to this point, this was also being played in a game between Fabiano Caruana and Yavokir Sindarov, and as I've done a couple other times in this event, I simply trust in Fabiano, so I choose to play the same idea that he has played in his game, with bishop g7 opening up the file for the rook. Now here, Gukesh plays move knight to e3, and this is the first one, which is a little bit dubious. In the game between Fabiano and Sindarov, Sindarov played the move bishop to e3, and after takes, knight f7, queen c2, the game was a very dynamic fight, but the game would end in a draw. So Gukesh goes knight d to e3, I take on e4, and now I play the move c6, opening up the diagonal for my queen, but also potentially to play d5, building a nice chain of pawns. We get the move queen c2, I play queen c7, and now Gukesh plays the move bishop g2. Now here I play the move queen to a5, and this is a move that probably is dubious, but the reason I play this move was I wanted to play a creative game. Keep in mind, this event is called Freestyle, so I want to start freestyling versus simply playing a mirror. I could also play something like knight d e6, and after d4, d5, we can play the mirror on the wall after castles, and the position is very dry and balanced for both sides. But I decide I want to have some fun, I want to freestyle, and I play the move queen to a5, trying to stop white from ever castling, because then you would hang the pawn on a2. So Gukesh plays the move pawn to a4 here, and now I play knight to f7. When I go knight f7, I have a different idea in mind. I really need to figure out where I'm developing so that my king can castle. Now, when I go knight f7, if white were to play h3, for example, I can already consider castling queenside, but I have another idea in mind because I have a feeling that Gukesh, having played a4, has zero intention of castling to this side. So Gukesh plays bishop f2, and now I play the move d5, creating my chain of 3 here, and also blunting the force of the light square bishop. Gukesh plays move d4, and now I play the move knight to d6 here, potentially stopping white from playing c4, and or jumping to e4 with my knight. Gukesh plays knight d2, and now I play the move bishop to h6, trying to take advantage of this pin on the long diagonal. Now, it was abundantly clear to me that when Gukesh played the move knight to d2, already here, he wanted to castle his king to the king side, but it probably is a little bit inaccurate. So I go bishop to h6, and now Gukesh plays queen d3. If he were to castle here, I do not take with the bishop, but instead I sack the rook, with rook takes knight, and after takes, bishop checks the king moves, and now I castle my king, and in the long run, with the bishop and the knight for the rook, I should be much better. So Gukesh plays move queen to d3, and now I play the move bishop to e6 here. The idea behind this move is to try and stop white from ever playing knight to g4. Gukesh castles his king, and now I play the move knight d7, and here we start to see the real genius of playing Fischer random chess, which is that in this position, Gukesh will always have to contend with two possibilities of me castling. For example, if white plays h3, I can castle kingside, but I can also castle queenside. So in this position, I keep both my options available to castle to the queenside and the kingside, and already at this point in the game, I thought I was doing quite well. So Gukesh plays b4, I go queen c7, and now he plays move g4. Now, it was clear to me that when Gukesh played g4, he was struggling to come up with an idea, because if white plays a move like b5, for example, I will castle to the king side, and after takes, b takes c6. There is an attack on the queen side, and these two b's are really well placed on e6 and h6. So We get b4, queen c7, Gukesh goes g4, and now I play the move bishop f4. Very important move, because if I were to castle here after bishop g3, I have to contend with this very annoying pin on the diagonal. So I go bishop f4, Gukesh plays bishop g3, I trade, and now I play the move knight to f7. Now here, I could have castled to the queen side here. Keep in mind, by the way, I cannot castle to the king side, as that would be castling the king through a check on the f file. Now, I could have castled to the queen side, but after the move b5, I was quite worried here. I was worried about c4 ideas, rook to b1, a5, a6, and I'm simply not really attacking on the king side. So I come up with a very creative move, knight to f7 here, and not only do I target the pawn on g3, now I potentially can castle the king to the king side. So Gukesh goes c4 here. For me, this was a move that I really expect him to play. Rook to f4 is also an idea to stop me from winning the pawn, but after I castle the king and white goes rook a f1, I think if anybody is better here, it's probably black after king g7. So Gukesh goes c4, I take the pawn, he plays rook f3, and now I take this pawn, attacking the queen on d3. Gukesh recaptures, and now I play the move queen c7, and here we get the move rook a f1. Now I go knight to g5, targeting the rook. Keep in mind, again, I could have tried to castle, but now after the move d5, let's just say I play knight fe5, white can trade off the knights, trade all the towers off the board, and after the move queen to f1, I have to go bishop to f7, or else I lose my bishop. And now white can play something like queen to f4, and even though black has one extra pawn on the king side, this very likely will be a draw. So I go knight g5, attacking the rook. Gukesh moves up, and now I finish my development on move number 24 by castling my king to the queen side. Now here, I'm up a pawn on the king side, and it's very clear that at this point, Gukesh has to go all in and try to attack on the queen side. So he plays b5. I play knight to c5 here, attacking the queen. White cannot capture the knight as he loses his queen on d3. Gukesh plays queen d2, I play knight e4 here, and this is a spot where I'm up 13 minutes on the clock, and I can feel like I'm better, but I still need to show great poise. So I play the move knight e4. Now, probably what I should have done was I should have traded the bishop for the knight on c4 and played knight to e6 here, and after takes, knight takes f4, maybe I'm still a little bit better. Instead, I play knight e4. Gukesh plays queen b2, I trade, and now I play the move knight g3. Now, this is very similar to the line that I just showed you, except my knight is on g3 versus being on e6. Here, Gukesh plays pawn takes pawn, and now I make a quick repetition. I throw in a couple of checks just to gain an extra minute on the clock. As you guys know, I've been pretty bad under time pressure so far in the event. So now I play the move knight takes rook, and this move is not a terrible move by any stretch, but probably I should have played the move pawn takes pawn, at least according to the computer. I was very worried about rook to f6 here, for example, but after knight g3, king g1, and rook to e2, apparently with these knights right near the white king here, I'm probably winning the game. Instead, I take the rook, Gukesh takes the pawn, we trade, and now I go king c7, and this is simply a mistake. Now, I had two options here, king c7 or king b8. Ultimately, I decided not to go king b8 because after rook takes f4, knight to e6, for example, I was very worried about something like rook to e4, knight takes d4, and knight to e5 here, and it's not 100% clear cut. Rook to f1 is also an option here, and after knight takes d4 and white plays a5, it should be better for black in the long term, but it's still not so clear because this bishop always guards this pawn. My rooks are kind of passive, and I have to worry about knight jumps down the road. Ultimately, however, I should have gone for that, but I wasn't sure if it was winning, so instead I opt to go for a specific endgame that I know is going to occur, but I completely misevaluated. So I play king c7, Gukesh takes, and now I play the move rook to f8, forcing white to trade the rook. Rook has no square on e4, Gukesh trades, but now he has a strange move knight to e5. Now right here, white has a bishop and a pawn for the rook. It looks like I'm stopping this pawn from getting up the board, but I actually have to be very careful here to not make a huge blunder. For example, if I play the move knight to f7, white can now promote the pawn to a queen, and after king takes queen, there's knight to d7, forking the king and the rook. There's also the move knight to d3 as well, intending to go to either c5 or b4, followed by the knight to a6 jump, so it's still quite tricky. But the line that I calculated when I played the move king c7 was this move knight to e6, and after Gukesh plays knight c6, now I go knight to f4. If I were to take the pawn on b7, white has knight d8, it's a classic fossil and a double check at the same time, and after king b6, knight takes e6, white is completely fine. So I go knight to f4, Gukesh queens, I take, sacking the rook, and at this point I thought that with even material on the board, a knight and 3 pawns versus a bishop and 3, I thought I would have a good chance to win because I can go after this pawn on d4 quite easily. Unfortunately, Gukesh uses time here, and he finds a perfect solution to save the game. He plays bishop f1, I go up, he goes king g1, knight e6, king f2, and now I win the pawn on d4. Here I have one extra pawn on the board, but unfortunately this white king is simply a little bit too active here. Coming up to e4, we get king d6, king e4, and now I can't really take advantage of the extra pawn. For example, if I play a move like knight to c5, white goes king f4. This is the game, of course, where white is trying to run to g5 and h6. If I leave the knight on e6, I can't really play h5, but additionally, this pawn in the long run on a6 will always be secured by the bishop, so I won't be able to win the pawn very easily. So I go knight c5, we get king f4, I play h6, and now Gukesh plays move bishop c4. Here I play knight d7, Gukesh plays king e4, I play knight e5, and now he goes back to e2 guarding the pawn. Here I play the move knight f7, he goes bishop c4, and now I go knight g5. If I play knight e5 and bishop e2, position remains very, very balanced. So I play knight g5, we get king f4, and now I play the move king c5. Gukesh plays bishop d3, targeting the pawn on g6. I go king b4, but now after the move a6, king a5, Gukesh plays king to e5, running up with the white king here. This bishop always will guard the pawn on a6, so I can't capture, and now I have to simplify. So I play the move knight f3, king f6, h5, Gukesh plays g5 here. This move is a little bit much. Probably he should have simply traded the pawns on h5 and played something like bishop e2, ending the game right away. But when he goes g5 here, this is a symbolic situation where Gukesh decides to try and say, look, I'm going to play the game to the very end. So I play h4. He takes, I go h3, we get bishop e4, and now I sack the knight by playing knight takes pawn, and after takes, I go h2, king g4, takes, king g3, I promote to a bishop, he takes, king b6, bishop e4, a5, bishop c2, and now I simply sack the last pawn on the board, and we have lone kings along with a white bishop, and the game ends in a draw. Now, I had some chance to potentially win this game, but it's worth pointing out that this game is very, very different from any of the games that I had against Sindarov, because the one or two chances I had to win, it was not clear-cut. My opponent always had counterplay, so I'm not going to be anywhere near as upset about the game. Now, I do want to point that out because a lot of people who are watching are newer to the game of chess. They're not high-end elite level players. Obviously, many of you guys aren't. But there is a difference in terms of games. In a game like this, it was always complicated. It was never concrete or clear-cut where I should be able to calculate a straightforward sequence to the end. So I'm not actually that unhappy about my failure to convert. What does that mean? That means the match is now tied 1-1 heading to the blitz. Now, in the first blitz game of 10 minutes, or I should say fast rapid with 10 minutes plus 10-second increment, the game would end in a draw, and that means we go to the second game where I am playing with the black pieces once again. So here Gukesh opens with the move c4, and it's already a very tricky position to start with. If I play a move like d6 here, after bishop takes h7, I'm simply going to lose my rook on g8. Now, in this position, I could, of course, choose the castle right away, but I did a video a couple weeks back from the first Freestyle Friday event where I said that I thought castling on move number 1 was a mistake, and I used my game against Minlay as the reference point. So I play the move knight to g6, avoiding hanging the pawn, and now Gukesh decides the castle is king. Here I play the move c6, and already here this really shows the difference in terms of analysis and human play versus computers. One of the big concerns that I had before the game, and I did analyze this with Yavokir Sindarov, because we both have the same color in our tiebreak games, is that after knight g3, I was very worried that after c5, white can play bishop to e4, hitting this pawn on b7, and already I thought the position was very tricky to play. So, after castles, I play c6, so now if white ever goes bishop e4, the diagonal is simply closed. We get the move e3, and now I play castle, and here Gukesh plays f4. Now already this opening has gone terribly wrong. We are simply on move number 4, and as you can tell from the evaluation, white is better to the tune of 0.65. So here I play the move f5, trying to close the diagonal, and now Gukesh plays knight b3. Here I play the move knight b6, and Gukesh plays the move knight g3. Computer already says after the move knight to c5, let's say I go queen c7 and d4, that white is much, much better with a much more grip on the center of the board with these pawns, and ultimately it's going to be very hard to defend. But it is a quick game, and Gukesh plays the move knight g3, I go e6 to guard the pawn, and now we get the move d4. Here I play the move d5, trying to clog the center of the board here with these symmetrical pawns here for both sides. And now Gukesh plays knight c5. I go queen e7, we get b3, I play bishop d6, and now Gukesh plays the very, very inspiring move pawn to a4. Now, when we reached this position after queen e7, initially I thought I was completely fine, but as I realized I'm playing someone who's much younger than me, someone who's studied computer games, has a slightly different understanding of the game, and I already realized here that I was going to have to try to grab a pawn, but the position was very dangerous. Now, keep in mind, I'd also been playing for nearly 5 hours at this point, and I was just trying to play move by move and not think too deeply, but most importantly also, of course, not blunder. So I take the pawn, Gukesh takes, I trade the bishop for the knight, and now I play the move knight d7. Now, at first glance, it looks great because I'm going to win this pawn on c5, but the big issue here is that white has the two b's, but more importantly, the center of the board is exploding, and if white can open up the diagonals for the bishops, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. I would also point out this is very reminiscent of the games that we've seen played between computer programs like AlphaZero and Stockfish, where you don't care about pawns as long as you can open up diagonals for the b's. So Gukesh plays bishop b4, and now I take the pawn on c5. This is simply a bad move, but honestly, at this point, I was struggling to think. I was very tired. I was just trying to play quickly and not blunder. Now, the computer says after rook to d8, queen to e2, and knight c5, this is a much better version simply because my rook is already on the d file. Instead, I take. We get the move e4, and now I trade and play the move b6, guarding my knight on c5. And here, Gukesh plays the move queen g4. Now, in this position, if Gukesh were to play the move g3 here, guarding the pawn on f4, the computer already says white is close to winning. And the reason is that basically my knight on g6 is really, really bad here. You can't take the pawn, you can't jump to the center, and meanwhile, white has this pin on this diagonal, and even queen to h5 could be very dangerous down the road. Luckily for me, Gukesh plays the move queen g4, also a very natural human move as it guards the pawn on f4, and now I play the move rook d8. Now, of course, computers are so good that it considers this queen g4 move to be a huge blunder because of the very obvious move, and I'm saying that with sarcasm, pawn to h5. And the reason this is fine for black is that if white takes the pawn, there's knight takes f4, and you might be thinking, why not check? And something like a checkmate here, something like a check, and I feel like there should be a way to mate. Maybe there isn't, although computer says white is winning after takes and rook to f1. So it feels really, really dangerous. But if white goes knight f6, I can take here with the rook, and after queen h7, I go king to f8, check, king f7, and now I simply have an extra knight on f4. But again, this is a quick game. I'm trying not to blunder, so I play the move rook d8 instead. Keep in mind, in the other line, it was rook d8, queen to e2. So basically, white has the queen on g4, spying the pawn, targeting the g file as well. So I've wasted a tempo here, and as you can tell, I am in serious trouble if Gukesh plays the best move. Now here, Gukesh plays the move rook c to e1. Computer, again, is screaming for the move g3 to guard the pawn on f4 here, and apparently white is winning. Now, the move Gukesh plays is rook to e1, and this is actually a move that I expected him to play, so even though the computer is giving other lines, I was actually ready for this. So now I play the move rook to d4. Now, keep in mind, one of the important things about playing blitz chess or rapid chess versus playing classical is that a lot of what matters is time and how easy your moves are to play. So I go rook d4 here, also apparently a blunder, by the way, and now Gukesh plays the move knight takes knight. Now, for the millionth time, computer again says just g3, giving up the pawn on c4, and white's winning after takes, and I guess h4, h5, and apparently even though white's missing two pawns in the middle of the board here with his bad knight on g6, the pressure on the diagonal, and the open e-file, white should be winning. But frankly, in a human game, especially in blitz, you're never going to give up all these pawns because it feels way too slow. So Gukesh takes knight. I take back, he plays rook takes pawn, and now I play the move queen to d7. Now, the great thing for me in this situation is not only are my moves only moves and very obvious, but Gukesh now has to find the correct plan. Because I'm pinning the rook on e6 here, but I'm also targeting the pawn on f4, and now it's getting very chaotic. So Gukesh plays bishop takes pawn, and now I play the move rook f8 takes f4. Now, the good thing here again is that I don't have a lot to calculate. If I play the move rook takes f4 after takes, and knight takes f4 takes, knight e6, and bishop to b4, probably the position after c5 and bishop c3 will be a draw, but I have no risk. However, I saw this line, but then I also saw there were other options as well. Another option I can play is knight takes pawn on f4, but here after the move bishop to f5, it's getting really, really hard to judge. I mean, I don't even know. Apparently after bishop h5, I'm okay here, but this is simply a complete mess, and you can't calculate it accurately. So I go for the other option, which is to play rook f8 takes f4. Now, the reason I play this is because unlike the other variation with rook d takes f4, all these moves up to bishop b4 would be played, and I'm simply not going to have any chances to win. But my opponent is down on time here, and after rook f8 takes f4, white now has to be very, very precise to not get in trouble, and Gukesh is not up to the task. He plays the move rook takes rook, and this move is the losing blunder. What Gukesh needed to play was bishop takes knight, sacking the queen, and here if I take the queen, there's rook to f8, checkmating the king on g8. So I have to go rook takes rook. And now after king takes, the only move to not lose is to play rook d1. If I play the move rook takes queen, white can now take the bishop on e8, checking my king. I have to sack the queen, and after takes, maybe here this is still perhaps a draw with perfect play, but only white can have chances to win. So in this position, after bishop takes g6, the line goes takes, and now I play the move rook to d1 check, and here white sacks the queen, queen takes rook, and after takes rook e1 here. Now suddenly the queen and the bishop are under attack. I can't check on d3 because that would be a Botez gambit. So all that I can do here is resack my queen, take the bishop, and after takes, bishop d3, c5, and king d7. Due to the opposite color bishops, this will be a draw, even though white has one extra pawn. But Gukesh instead plays the move rook takes rook. Now I take with the knight here, and already white has gone completely astray. The rook is pinned on e6 as the queen is hanging. If white were to play the move bishop takes rook here, I can take, and after king to h1, now I play the move bishop d7, and it's uh-oh spaghetti-o time with the back rank checkmates existing like queen d1, as well as the pin of the queen and the rook. I'm simply winning. So Gukesh plays the move bishop to f5 with 5 seconds left on the clock. I throw in the check, we get king f2, and now I play queen d2 check. I do not take the rook, of course, because after bishop takes knight, my queen and my king are under attack, and I will lose the game. So I play queen d2. Gukesh moves up, I take the rook, and now after the move king to h8, I have achieved my dream, which is a winning position here. I have a rook for a bishop, but I need to remember to not let it slip because I've been in this situation before in this tournament where I've had multiple positions against Sindarov where I did not put the game away. So Gukesh plays queen to f5, and now I play the move queen to d3. This is the final sort of touch here. I get rid of the queens here. I stop the ice skater checkmate with queen f8. Gukesh trades. He goes king f4, and now I play the move a5. Now, the only issue that I have here is if white can somehow get the king in and win the c-pawn, for example, just to set up a line, if white can somehow get a position like this, where he takes, and something like this, white will move the bishop to b6, play c5, c6, and now white has chances to win. So the only issue here after king to e5 is not letting this white king in. So I play rook to d2 here, targeting the pawns, but also cutting off the white king from moving forward. Gukesh plays bishop h3, and this is the final blunder of the game. Now, Gukesh could have played bishop b6 here, but after rook takes g2, let's say, actually, bishop takes b6, I was going to play the move c5 here, although apparently it's a blunder. I was going to play c5, but the winning line is rook takes g2, and after bishop takes a5, there's rook g5 here. I think also rook to a2 is probably good enough to win as I get rid of the a-pawn. Instead, Gukesh plays bishop to h3, and now I go bishop f7, targeting the c-pawn. If white loses the c-pawn and there are no ideas of pushing p up the board here, there is no shot. Gukesh plays bishop e3, I go rook d3, bishop d4, and now I take the pawn on c4. And at this point, I can breathe a very heavy sigh of relief because now there is no chance of messing up. Now, Gukesh plays the move bishop to d7 here. At this point, he could already resign. He plays bishop d7, and now I play the move c5 here, attacking the bishop on d4 and the bishop on d7. If you take, I take the bishop. Even rook d5, by the way, also wins one of the bs, and the game is over. So, after this move c5, I get a huge win in the second blitz game. This means that I finally win a match. I eliminate Gukesh from contention, and this means that tomorrow I'm going to play for 5th or 6th place against Norbek Abdusatorov, who defeated Alireza Firouzja. So, all's well that ends well in this match. I think the main takeaway for me is that I proved that I can be competitive. I got a winning position once again in the classical game, and that does hopefully bode well for the future. Now, that being said, I have seen a lot of comments online about people thinking that I was tilted the other day with my comments. I want to clarify because I didn't say this after the first recap, but what I said then still holds true in spite of my result against Gukesh. This has nothing to do with drama or saying something for clickbait. I still feel the same way, where if I do not play well in Norway chess, or if I do not play well in the World Cup, I probably will stick to the original plan that I mentioned before. So I just want to get that out of the way because I know some people on the internet are busy making a big deal about it, that suddenly I'm back and obviously, I'm a drama queen and everything else. That is not the case. What I said then still holds true. So I just want people to be aware of that, just the fact that it's not something I'm saying for clickbait as a whole. So that's a little bit negative, but want to get that out there. At any rate, it's a very positive day. I get a win against the current world chess champion, prove that I can still compete against these young dogs, even if it's getting tougher and tougher, and I move on to fight another day. So obviously tomorrow I'll play in the final match for 5th and 6th place against Noterbeck. If I win, I finish in 5th. If I lose, I finish in 6th place. But we go again with 2 more classical games that will be played over the next 2 days and potentially some tiebreaks as well. So on that note, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from my 5th through 8th place match against Gukesh Domaraju, the current world chess champion from India. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with a recap tomorrow after I play Noterbeck. But that's going to do it for right now. I'm really tired. I simply want to go to sleep. So I'll see you soon, and have a great rest of your evening. See you guys. Bye.